Okay, let me take care of that. I got it. Right. I love the concept of creating your ultimate mind diet because it's absolutely how it works, right? The thoughts that we choose to entertain, the thoughts that we don't have control over what comes into our mind all the time, but we do have a choice as to what we entertain and what we choose to work with and what we choose to nurture, right? And the thoughts that we think influence our emotions influence our thoughts. Those in turn influence our actions, and all of these have an energetic value to them. And it's also instigating a chemical cocktail reaction within our body. And so we are responsible for our own health as much as we can, right? And there's so much. The research shows that over 90% of health conditions and illnesses are lifestyle induced. And so, okay, let's get a handle on that. And so I always like to start with breath work. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to do a little sunshine quotient breathing. The sunshine quotient is a term that refers to lighting gradients in photography and radiology. And I've applied it to people because we are light beings and we are, there we go. All right. Yeah. We are light beings. We emit light and information constantly, and we receive light and information constantly. There's my sunshine. Right. And so, so what's fascinating about this is the sunshine quotient is a term that refers to lighting gradients in photography and radiology, and I've applied it to people because we are these light beings. And so if you understand, and we'll talk a little bit about the vagus nerve too, but when you think about it, we don't breathe ourselves on our own. We don't make our hearts beat on our own. We are fueled and a part of this whole universal energy that we're a part of. We're all a part of nature. And it's important to learn how to work with this universal energy and the energy principles and the universal laws that are always in play. There's so much more going on than just, gravity and electricity, right? The laws of those two things. And it's important to be connected with ourselves. So this is a beautiful way to not only get connected with yourself, through the breath work. It's a beautiful way to establish a mindfulness practice that will blossom out into being more mindful more frequently, because the more present that we can be as we move through our days, the more power we have. The power is really within us. And so that age-old concept of breathing in the light and visualizing that you're breathing in the light. So if you take in a deep breath through the nose, visualizing that you're breathing in the light and you're filling up with sunlight with every little crease and crevice of you. And your heart is actually getting bigger. It's glowing. You're glowing from the inside out. And when you take in that deep breath, you are engaging your vagus nerve. And that invites the calming side of your nervous system to engage. So when you take in these deep breaths, you can feel it. The vagus nerve is connected to almost every organ in your body. And when you take in that deep breath, you lower your heart rate, your blood pressure, you stimulate that vagus nerve and the chemical cocktail, a reaction of engaging calmness. And so what I think is important is let's do 3 breaths all together, in through the mouth, out, I'm sorry, in through the nose and out through the mouth as if you're gently blowing out a candle flame. So we'll do this 3 times. It just feels good, doesn't it? I think it's fabulous. And I encourage everybody to do it. I encourage everybody to establish themselves with a breathwork practice. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this one. There are many, breath practices out there. There's box breathing, there's Wim Hof, there's um, any number of variations of breath work, but we're all really talking about the same thing, getting connected with ourselves and learning to work with this interconnection that we have. And that will branch out to, some people are more auditory, some people are more visual as far as being mindful. Rub your hands together. Notice what you're noticing as you're washing your hands. Notice the water running over your hands. Just these simple things that actually invites a simpler way of living and actually helps to eliminate a lot of those distracting information bits that are coming to us constantly. I think it's important to take a look at that and prioritize what you're thinking. And just so you have a good visual, you can see how extensive this vagus nerve is. I think it's really important for people to understand the basics of how we all operate. And we have 12 pair of cranial nerves, and the vagus nerve is cranial nerve number 10. And as you can see, it's connected to, as I said before, just about every organ in your body. And when you learn to work with it, you have a lot of advantages that really inform how you choose to start thinking. When you think about what you are choosing to think and what your actions are inviting by incorporating how your body is operating as well, you have a broader view of how you're operating, but also a more focused view at the same time because you want to serve yourself as best you can. When the other thing that's interesting to know, because we're electromagnetic beings, that what's fascinating is that your thoughts are electrical and your emotions are magnetic. And so when you understand that the nervous system is electrical as well. And so when you're putting all of these pieces together, and we don't have to know, the every little bit of the fine tuning of the science, right? As to how we're operating. We don't have to know all the chemistry and the biology and the physiology, but knowing the basics of our operating system, I think is a huge advantage for people. And so this is what as you see at the very bottom, it's what I refer to as the rules of the game, because the research shows that we think between 18,000 and 70,000 thoughts in one day. And 90% or so of those are the same as the day before and the day before and the day before that, and how many years or generations before that, right? Because a consistent use of languaging and thought processes, lead to our belief system. And if we can take time to really evaluate our belief system one by one, and as they come up, right, what's fascinating is that we do understand that some of the beliefs that we've been holding on to for so long really don't serve us. They really have no place in how we operate at this point. And I think it's important to do this evaluation and develop a good relationship with what I call the curious observer. In some arenas, it's referred to as the witness. It's important to look at yourself from the outside looking in. And there's no need to go down the rabbit hole of why did I think that? Or why did they say that? Or why did I get here? If you can look at yourself with a little mischief, that curiosity, right? It takes the sting out of things. It takes the emotional sting out of it. And what's fabulous about the whole thing is that you can go, what was I thinking that caused me to make that decision? And look at it a little more objectively and then decide what it is, what change you want to make. Hello, Danusha. How are you today? And so it's so fun to get into this process. I believe self-development is an adventure. I don't think it has to be a millstone, right? I mean, there are certain things that we've all had happen to us, or maybe there's a situation that we're not happy about for sure, but everything is temporary, and it doesn't mean that we absolutely have to stay there. And so I think that I had not opened the chat. Oh, great to see you too, Danuja. Yeah, it's fun. Um, I think it's important to just become as self-aware as you can. And I think that there is a lot to be said in developing a level of self-awareness, but also understand that developing that level of self-awareness increases your connection with yourself and what we call the spiritual side of ourselves, because it helps to develop your intuition. And the more mindful you can be, because we are three-dimensional beings and basically how we live, I think it's important to also give yourself the opportunity to explore yourself, because what is it that you really want? We all have dreams. We all have things that we want to accomplish. Those things that might be referred to as a calling, a mission, a purpose. It's important to have that purpose and to be intentional about serving that purpose, because I think it's also very easy to get sidetracked and be batted around by circumstances if we're not clear on how we are operating ourselves. And that's why I like the concept of thinking of your mind as like a garden. And what thought seeds are you planting? And are you tending the garden? Are you watering the garden? Are you nourishing the garden? Or have you planted the seeds and wandered off? And those seeds are still in motion, whether you're tending to them or not, right? And so it's important to tend to that garden and really serve yourself, be respectful of yourself, to, and honor all of this gift that we've been giving, because I believe that we all have unique gifts and we're all here for a reason, and we are all interconnected. And so it's what I really call the rules of the game. I think it's really important to honor that. And so I always like to do a little quick life assessment, and then I'm going to open this up for a little discussion if you folks are wanting to do that. Um, I use this life assessment. It's very quick. I learned from one of my mentors, Mary Morrissey, and on a scale of 1 to 5, what's your life satisfaction number in 4 categories? And 1 is, I really love it. It's fabulous. And 5 is, I'm really not that wild about it, right? Because there's been so much that has been piling on here that I'm feeling that it's a millstone at this point. And so the 4 categories are health and well-being. And the second one is relationships. The third one is vocation, or how you spend your time. And the fourth one is time and money freedom. And when you think about that, where you're at with those things, I think it's important to have in mind as we go on and talk more about the mechanics of thinking, the physiology of thinking, and the science of thinking. Because I think sometimes we get bogged down in some of these assessment areas, and we think that we're never going to to make any progress, right? Because it's been an accumulative effect, and it's just like, oh my word, how in the world did I ever get here? Um, but again, everything is temporary. The universal energy works in an upward spiral. Everything is always in motion. We are in motion, and we're all going into unknown territory, and so it's understandable that we become afraid sometimes, and we do shy from making the progress that we really believe not so much yet, right? That we're meant to be here for. And so I think if anybody would like to unmute and we could talk about this, I think that that would be fun. And if not, I'll just keep going.
We do have a question in the comments. It says, how do our thoughts influence our emotions? I don't understand.
Ah, okay. So every thought and every emotion and every action has an energetic value to it. And when you think about feeling really joyous about something, right? I mean, you can feel that your emotional response to that thought brings up your vibrational, level, right? And when you think about, oh, I can't believe that, she's coming over here again, or, there's been an altercation and you've got a history with someone, and every time that thought comes through about that one particular person, you have a tendency to go and down on the emotional energetic scale. And I'll actually show you a great illustration of that in a little bit. And all of these things elicit the chemical cocktail reaction in your body, and you have feel good hormones and you have not so feel good hormones. You have stress hormones, right? And so when you're lower down on the scale and you're living with more stress hormones, it doesn't make you feel very good, and your emotions are in tune with your chemical cocktail reactions and your thoughts. And that's why it's important to cultivate a practice of evaluating what your thoughts are, how you're feeling, what it's doing to your body reactions, and how does this all work together? Because we do have a choice to look at things from different perspectives. We don't have to be working with the same perspective all the time. When you think of a circle and how many perspectives there are around that circle to look at a center point, there are a lot of different ways to look at things. And some of them are appealing and some of them are not practical. Some of them are not useful at all. However, when we're open to looking at things through more possibilities and more opportunities, we're actually becoming more solution oriented and more creative. And that takes us further up on the scale. So does that answer your question?
I have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. Right.
Next question is, there's one more.
Okay.
What's the difference between relationships, love versus family?
Well,
I'm assuming maybe they mean relationships as a whole. So what if I'm like in a horrible romantic relationship, but my relationship with my family is okay? How does someone grade that? I think that's a question.
oh, I understand what you're asking. It, it goes back to perspective, right? How much value are you giving to this romantic relationship that may not be going along as you thought it would? And yet you have the support of your family, which is a beautiful thing. And how does possibly the support of your family influence how you might want to look at this romantic relationship a little bit differently? What changes would you like to see? And so where does that put you on the scale, right? Because what's also interesting about this question is, because we have choice as to what we choose to think, and we have choices as to our actions, we also have a choice as to how we teach other people to treat us, because what you tolerate is what you teach. And what's interesting is that when we are tolerant of people not treating us well, it really gives them the license to just keep doing it, right? I was talking to this fellow the other day, and he had just casually mentioned, that his wife was throwing things at him. And I said, "What?" And, you know, and they've been married for a very long time. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So how long has this been going on? He says, well, quite some time. And I said, well, okay, it doesn't feel good, but also you have a role in this because you've been tolerating it for all this time, right? And so how much longer do you want to do that? And I think that that plays into how we evaluate and how we rate ourselves. It's just like, ah, okay, I have a role in everything. And what can I do to improve myself, to move me a little bit further up the emotional energetic scale, to allow more opportunities and possibilities to come to me too?
Beautiful.
I think it's really fun. So it is interesting as to where we're at. This is something that I think it's a really useful for people to know about, is that in our brainstem, we do have this reticular activating system, which is also referred to as the RAS. And I like to think of it as a synthesizer, because the thoughts that we're thinking, I mean, I think of a scavenger hunt, actually, right? What we're thinking is going down through that RAS, and that's what we're looking to find. And because that's what we're looking to find, that's more of the information that's coming in. So you can see when you put into play also about the 18,000 to 70,000 thoughts in a day, and about 90% of them being the same. And then if we continue with these repetitive thoughts, and that's really what we're looking for, and that's what we're finding, and that's what's coming back in. It's to see how you can get on this loop. And so getting on a negative loop is actually easier than keeping focus on that open 10% of the positive, possibilities that are out there, and working consciously to make the changes, to course correct ourselves as we go along, to eliminate more of the negative thinking and open up as to what we're looking for, what we're looking to find on a more positive level. And getting back to that scavenger hunt, if you're looking for a red balloon, that's what you're looking for as you're, going up, along your day. You're not even going to see that beautiful black Ferrari that's over on the next corner because you're focused on the red balloon, right? And it's fascinating when people go into meetings and they've already got their mind made up as to how this meeting is going to go, and what Sally's reaction is going to be and what Joe's reaction is going to be. That's basically what's going to come to us, right? And might not even realize or recognize that Joe and Sally have said something totally different, and it could be a solution, but it's not received that way, right? Because of how this operates. And I think it's just imperative that people understand about how we do operate, because our reality is based, our experiences are based on how we're thinking and the choices that we make. And of course, our choices are made by our thoughts and our emotions and our actions. So um, when you think about being your own showrunner, that's it. We are our own showrunner. And I think that it's also fascinating when you think of systems like the healthcare system, the political system, the educational system. A lot of these things have been built on previous understandings of how we do think and how things should be set up. Um, but those are pretty much obsolete, because the research is just blossoming at this point. I mean, and quantum physics has been around for how long, right? So And it's pretty much how we operate. So let's operate with what we have, right? That is really just such a beautiful gift, and it's fabulous. So I do want you to be aware too of this emotional energetic scale, because, and this is courtesy of the Omega Institute, and certainly no copyright infringement intended here, right? But it's a beautiful, colorful image imprinting, image, so you can actually use that and say, okay, I did get a little ticked off there. I don't need to stay there. I don't really want to stay there. What can I let go of? What is not serving me about this particular situation? And what step can I take to take me up a little bit further on the scale? It doesn't, it's not a big leap, and not everything happens overnight, and not every situation is going to be coming up the scale at the same level, right? Because we have so many different experiences that come from different angles and from different points of view within. And also understand that because everything is changing, we're changing too, right? And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. I don't, this doesn't include hope. But hope is an interesting thing because it's a fabulous bridge. It's the only positive emotion that requires a negative emotion as a catalyst. And we don't always want to keep living on the bridge, but it's a beautiful tool to say, I hope, right? Because what it does, it opens up a little possibility. And then that takes you a little bit further up the scale, and a little bit further, and a little bit further, and a little bit further you go. What's beautiful about that is that's where you run into more opportunities and more possibilities. And we're all a part of nature, and nature is very much about expansion and procreation. And I think of it like improv. Life is like yes and.
I love the yes and I use it every single day. I have a question, Catherine.
Yep.
Why is the color coding opposite?
Well, it's interesting because I've noticed that myself. And I think that what's fascinating too is that they have done that because of the possibilities. And that's just I haven't done any research into that. I actually made a note as to ask that question. Why is that? Because it's also interesting in that when you think about being really, if you're really ashamed about something and you get that flush of red, right?
Yeah.
That's got a lot of energy in it. And what's interesting also is that when you are really joyful about something, that has a lot of energy in it. And some of these other things in the middle, it's okay. I'm making progress. But why they are opposite? I'm going to get back with you on that because I never did follow through on my question about it, and now you've got me curious again.
Yes, 100%. I also
Right?
think it's very interesting that alpha, which many people view as being like powerful, is actually red.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting because there's a difference between power and there's a difference between force, right?
Hmm.
And force is typically more of an external or um, outside force, and power is comes from inside. It comes from alignment. It comes from using the power that we're all a part of, right? And when you think of the power of the universal energy, pretty amazing. Do you have any more questions?
Not right now.
Okay. I just wanted to introduce you to Uniumi because I think Uniumi, your sunshine ambassador, is so darn cute. And it just makes you feel good. I think it helps your day, right? And if you have any questions or want to get in touch with me, I've got lots of stuff going. I have a kids program going for with the calendar for living intentionally. And as I was mentioning to Sabrina earlier, I'm working with a company to digitize my Ultimate Mind Diet daily planner and journal. And so I'm delighted to keep you updated on that and answer any other questions that you may have or how I could be of further assistance to you.
Beautiful. Question in the chat. How do I develop self-awareness? How does knowing I am mad when I am mad help me?
Well, you can evaluate yourself and ask yourself, is it serving me to stay being mad? It's also important to know that the research shows that the average lifespan of an emotion is 90 seconds or less. And we can get an awful lot of information in 90 seconds that we can use to make a change, or we can keep perpetuating it and just keep being mad. And what does that serve, right? Yeah. And so when you go back to here, if you're in the anger zone, it's not a great place to be because it is inviting chemical cocktail reactions in your body that are, causing stress hormones to come into play. And constant or continued stress is what causes the body on a cellular level to start breaking down because it's not how the body is meant to operate. Obviously we need those stress hormones in times of an emergency, survival, right, to keep ourselves safe, but we're not meant to live with those stress hormones in play all of the time. And the other thing that's interesting about the research is that with the study of epigenetics, which is how we react to our environment, they're finding that what they had thought previously was about 20% or so of health conditions and illnesses were predisposed, genetically predisposed. That's down to only about 1 or 2% now, because what they're finding is actually our reaction to our environment that either upregulates the gene or downregulates it and dictates how that gene is going to influence the rest of our body operation. And so I think that it will help you to understand that staying mad, is it worth your while? Right?
Wow. So they're actually saying that less than 10% is actually genetics. Did you say?
Predisposed. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because
So this
they're
whole, I don't mean to interrupt you. So this whole, like, it runs in the family. It's not really a thing.
right. Not really a thing. Right. Just because my mom had Alzheimer's doesn't mean that I have to have Alzheimer's. Right.
Wow. That is so interesting. So what you're saying is it all goes back to this chart predominantly and our emotions.
Mhm. What we choose to think. Right.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
It's really a marvelous study. Right. And I love studying about it. And getting back to the epigenetics, Dr. Bruce Lipton has written quite a bit about it. He has a great book called The Biology of Belief. And I would recommend that if you're interested in taking a look at that.
That's awesome. So I heard everything that you said, loved all the explanations. Can we, as we're wrapping up here, can we dive a little bit deeper into the first question that she asked, which was, how do I start to develop self-awareness? So like
Ah,
what's her first step to even, if she doesn't even understand that.
okay. I would encourage you to start doing some breath work and just have the understanding that um, we are three-dimensional beings. We have the physical side of us, we have the mind side of us, and we have the spiritual part of us, the soul part of us, however you want to describe it, that actually fuels us. And so when you think about tying all of this in together, the easiest way, I believe, is to start with breath work and understand that when you do take in that deep breath and invite that calming side of your nervous system, it gives you an opportunity to pause, and it helps to slow down what you're thinking about. It gives you an opportunity to respond versus react, and to just keep continuing to do that. I would encourage you to, if you're, more physically inclined along with the breath work, rub your hands together. When you're out in nature, notice the breeze on your skin, right? Notice the sun on your skin. Notice, you know, the wind rustling through the leaves. Notice that little puppy dog. It's staying in the present moment, which is going to help you increase your level of self-awareness. And mindfulness will lead its way for you or for anyone into a more of a meditative practice. And that doesn't mean that we all have to meditate for hours. There are walking meditations, there are guided meditations, there are ways that we can actually stop all of the stimulus. We don't actually stop it, we quiet it enough to get into a state where we increase our intuition and we are actually open to receiving and intuiting all of this information that's coming to us constantly, because there is so much coming at us. We can't possibly take it all in. And it's important to be discerning as to what we do want to allow in, what serves us, because there's much more to our own lives than helping other people live theirs. We're all here to be of service with each other, right? But that doesn't mean being a doormat either, right? And I think it's important to develop ourselves and like become those keen, intuitive, vibrant people, right? Because that's what connects us with not only the universal energy, as far as allowing the recognition of that, but it also allows the invitation for connecting with other people that are more like-minded, that are interested in doing some of the same things you are. And I think self-awareness is one of those things. It's an exploratory exercise that you can use over and over and over and over, because life is kind of like an experiment, and some things work more effectively than others. And what I consider to be a meditative practice might not be a meditative practice for someone else. For me, going for a walk can be a meditative practice, particularly if I'm near the water, right? And you just get mesmerized and get connected with the nature. Connecting with nature is a beautiful way to start developing more self-awareness also.
Beautiful. Love it.
Okay.
Are we wrapping up?
I think so. Thank
I
you,
love
Sabrina.
it.
Well,
Can you
thank
put your information on the screen one last time, just so that anyone who watches this now or on the replay?
Okay, I can do that.
and screenshot it or do
Yeah.
what they have. So is this your website?
Yes.
The front center? Okay, awesome.
Yep, because that will connect you to information about everything. So I think that's the most concise and easiest way to do it.
Absolutely. Very, very cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. Definitely some awesome, awesome information dropped. For those of you watching live, thank you. And for those of you that had questions and comments, thank you for those. And if you're watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at, so we can send you some love a little later on. Thank you.
Okay. Sabrina, thank you so much. This is great.
Beautiful.